My head was seized by the creature above me. It caught me on either side of the head like this. And then a third creature drove something into my right nostril here. It was as if I had been shocked. The pain was so terrible that I screamed and screamed. Blood filled my mouth. Blood spurted out of the nostril, and the creature did not seem to care. I was stupefied. The pain was so intense, so terrible. And then, quietly, brutally, the creature pulled out the thing that it had stabbed me in the nose with. And blood flowed into my mouth, out of my nostril, and I was choking. And then the big creature coldly turned my head this way, so that blood came out of the mouth, and which gave me some kind of relief. And after what seemed like an eternity of pain, the creature brought something out of somewhere, which looked like an old-fashioned tea strainer in appearance, and it put this thing close to my nose. And then I seemed to drift away, and the pain subsided. You know, sir, it was torture so intense that even now I can't describe it. And then something else happened. A fourth creature started rummaging between my legs, and it pulled out my organ of manhood and stuck something into that. It was very strange, but I wasn't feeling any pain now. But I could feel the flexible cable moving inside me, right into my body. And then, I can't describe it. It was as if my seed was being sucked out by this small, bright, flexible cable. And then the creature just pulled it out. I screamed and I cried and I screamed, but I could not move. And then something happened which to this day still amazes me. After the creature had pulled out the flexible cable from my organ, the creature just stood there looking at my organ. And I was so terrified that I urinated and accidentally urinated against the chest of the creature. It jumped away as if I had shot it, and it stumbled backwards. But its face didn't show any expression. Its mouth didn't even open, but the way the creature reacted, trembling all over, it was as if I had really hurt it, but it was wearing this kind of garment. And after that, I was left alone, except for the big creature, which stood to my right side this time, with his arms folded, looking down at me. And then, while I was looking at this creature, trying to appeal to it, no pain anymore, no pain, please, I was pleading. Pictures suddenly flooded my mind. Pictures of buildings sunk in a red lake of water. Buildings rotting away. Buildings that appeared as if they had been bombed. And cities sunk in terrible mud. Trees sticking out like rotten ghosts. trees without leaves, without branches, sticking out of the mud as if they had been poisoned. I saw visions of this. And then, through an entrance which I had not seen before, came a strange and terrible beings. It was exactly like this. It was tall, made entirely of metal, with burning eyes and a snout. It didn't do anything. It just moved and came to stand at my left side. It didn't touch me or anything like that. It just stood there, making a strange humming sound. Wow, 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 like that. And then, from behind this metal creature, there appeared another creature. It was so radically different from the great creatures in that it looked exactly like an earthly human being. It had a pink skin like that of a white woman. It had golden hair, and its ears were definitely pointed like those of an animal. Its eyes were slightly slanting. They were pale, pale blue, and never once did they blink. It was like this, nude, and there was a tail-like appendage at its back, which was very visible as it walked away after it had done to me what it did. What this thing did, it climbed over me and made love to me. And I noticed that unlike normal women, its breasts were set too high in its chest, and they were very, very hard in appearance. And that here, the pubic hair as well as the hair in the armpits was a fiery red, as if it had been dyed. And this thing didn't even blink. Its eyes were just like this, looking at you as if there was no liquid in the eyes. Just an unblinking, terrible stare. And it was a small creature, about the size of a 16-year-old girl. But it was very, very heavy as it sat on top of me. And there was no emotion in that whole nonsense. There was no, and then the creatures took me out of that room after the metal creature and this pink creature had gone. This creature took me out of that room, assisted by another one. And they pushed me along a corridor which curved slowly in that direction, towards my right. And there I was shown many things which even today I don't understand. I was shown little versions of this creature swimming in huge cylinders made out of what looked like glass, in a pinkish liquid, like ugly little frogs inside the liquid. They looked like aborted human fetuses. They were very, very terrible and disgusting. And then we came to another room, and there I saw a number of people undergoing the same torture that I had undergone. One particular person whom I passed very close to was a white man, definitely a European, with yellowish beard and moustache and long, straggly blood-crusted hair. This man looked into my eyes and I looked into his eyes. And we were so close we were as I went past him. Then, to cut a long story short, I found myself in the bush again. But I was wearing only my shirt. My boots were gone and so was my trousers. So I took off my shirt and wore it around my waist as a loincloth. And I started traveling, not knowing really in which direction I was going. Then I came to a track and I walked along that. And some time later I saw people coming towards me. It was a group of young men and young women, Mashona people, and they were going to a trading store I later learned. I asked them where Elizabeth Moyo's homestead was, and they directed me to it. But they kept a safe distance away from me. And later I learned why. I was carrying a horrible, non-human smell upon me. When at long last I came to Mrs. Moyo's village, all the dogs in that place went hysterical. They came at me in a pack, wanting to tear me to pieces. And only the villagers managed to save my life there. Mrs. Moyo asked me where I had been, and I said I did not know. And then she said, I know you had been taken by the little ones. I said, yes. I cannot understand. She said, you must not try to understand. You were chosen by the gods as a living sacrifice. So don't even try to talk about this. But how could I not talk about it? I wanted to understand what had been done to me, by whom and why. Even now, sir, I still want to understand what it was all about. And many years later, I met a remarkable white woman, Elizabeth Clara, a famous South African woman who had worked for British intelligence during the war, and who, we are told, had been impregnated by a being from the stars, Akor. I asked Elizabeth what was the meaning of the strange thing which was done to me, because since that time I had come across many black people, well over 200, who had been through the same torture as I. I had come across many black as well as Cape-colored women who had been mysteriously impregnated by the same creatures that I had gone through the hands of. And let me tell you one other interesting thing, sir, before I forget. About a year after I had underwent this terrible experience, I was walking along Jeppe Street in Johannesburg, delivering parcels, when a white man shouted at me to stop. I stopped. I thought he was a policeman wanting to arrest me for some reason. And when I tried to produce my identity document, the white man said, listen, I don't want your nasty word, passbook kefa. I said, then sir, what do you want, boss? He said, listen, where did I see you? Where did I see you? I said, I don't know that. But he looked very familiar to me. And then he said, listen, don't bullshit me, man. Where did I see you? Where did you and I meet? Then I said to him, I saw you in Rhodesia, in a certain place. You were lying on a table. If I had hit that white man with a fist, he would not have reacted the way he did. He went pale, almost dirty grey in appearance, and he turned away with a terrible, dirty word, and he walked away. His eyes were filled not with anger, sir, but with pure, naked terror.
Astonishing story.
Yes, but there is more, sir. There is more, because I still want to know what was done to me. Say, one day you and I must talk more, in greater depth than now. I would like to tell you that since that time, I have found that I know things that a man of my standard of education shouldn't know. These hands, and those who know me can confirm this, these hands not only have made these sculptures using ancient African metal casting secrets. These hands, believe it or not, can make guns and working jet engines. And one day I wish you to come back to South Africa and I will show you one of these things. I know things which I shouldn't know, and it started at that time. Now, you see, sir, I want to know, what am I? Since that terrible time, my life as a man was really messed up. And one day let me tell you, sir, since that time, I have become a very confused creature. It's embarrassing, really. But since that terrible day, I became bisexual, which to me as an African is very, very disgusting. Since that time, my mind doesn't seem to be my own. I think about things that a man like me shouldn't bother himself about. I worry about people. It's sickening. I have ruined my life because of worrying about people. I feel that I want to take every human being on this earth by the shoulders, shake them roughly and say, listen, Pastor, there is more to this earth than you think. Say, I have seen the Chituari. I have smelt them. I've had personal experience of these. And there are people who claim that these creatures are gods. There are people, sir, who claim that these creatures are experimenting on us. That is a lot of rubbish. These creatures are harvesting us. These creatures are not aliens, Mr. Ike. These creatures are sexually compatible with our women. And what does that tell you? it tells you that they came from here. They are part of us. And this makes them all the more dangerous. They know us very, very, very well. They know the great weaknesses of our minds, just as they know the great strengths of our minds. They operate in what I call the gray area of human existence, that side of our lives which we don't want to acknowledge the existence of. They create, African tradition says that the Chituari, where they engaged God himself in a terrible war, and God defeated them, the real God, Nkulunkulu, the Creator. God defeated them, and he closed their mouths so that they are unable to talk or to eat food anymore. But we are told, say, that the Chituari fatten on the energy that we human beings give them. They make us to fight each other. And when the whole land is drowning in death and fear and terror, when hundreds and hundreds of people are angry and afraid, the Chituari get fat because they eat that what we call the dark power, which is brought about when human beings destroy the planet on which they live.
They feed off human emotion.
Yes, sir. Very, very intense human emotion. We are told, for example, that if you see a Chituari walking through the bush or just standing there and looking at you, and you are accompanied by your wife or your girlfriend, you must immediately make love to that girlfriend and release as much emotion as possible, and the Chituari will be pleased and will walk away from you and not harm you. And another thing, sir, we are told that the Chituari eat energy which is generated when hundreds of human minds or one human mind starts thinking at certain levels. We are told that the Chituari want us to think at certain levels.
Certain wavelengths.
Yes, sir. And they reward us with long life. May I ask you, sir, have you ever thought, as a thinking person, why is it that in the great universities of this world you find professors who think at certain levels and who live unnaturally long lives? Albert Einstein, Raymond Dart, Robert Broom, all these professors live a long, long time. And my Aunt Mina, the last Sanusi in South Africa other than myself, is as active as a young girl, and yet she's close to her 99th year of life. My stepmother, Rose, she has lost nearly all her children, and she is still alive. Extreme longevity is the reward with which the Chituari reward you if you think at certain wavelengths.
The description of your abduction clearly is describing what has become known as the Greys, what I think is also known by some as the ant people, the grey figures with the big black eyes. How do you think they connect in with the openly reptilian? And do you think that the black covers of the eyes are covering some kind of reptilian truth?
Say, the so-called grey aliens are actually the lackeys and the servants of the Chituari. If you see a Chituari and you see this, there is very little racial difference. In fact, I will even go so far as to say this, that these creatures are actually the offspring of the Chituari. The way they gather substances from human beings and from animals, the way they are the forerunners of the Chituari in any place. And if you are very close to one of these creatures and you look into its goggle-like eyes, you will see round eyes, Mr. Ike, beyond this black goggle-like stuff. And these eyes are the real creature's eyes. Now let me tell you, there is in Lesotho a very strange mountain, a mountain called Leribe, Leribe. On this mountain, very amazing things happen after every 10-year or 20-year period. Now, not so long ago, an African farmer found an object near that mountain, an object which had crashed. And he was driving his tractor and he saw this strange object lying in the ground with tiny little bolts of lightning racing all around its edge. And the African walked up to the object, and when he wanted to touch it, a strange power struck him and sent him sprawling on his back to the ground. The African got onto his tractor and got out of there. What the African had seen had been a crashed UFO, a flying saucer. He described it very amazingly. And he said that after a few days, there appeared what he said was a huge removal van, very big, accompanied by soldiers wearing black uniforms, goggles and berets. And these soldiers lifted the object into the van, and the van drove away. But when the people came to the site, they saw that something had fallen there, but they saw no heavy tire tracks of the vehicle that the man had described. Something had crashed there, had been removed, but there were no wheel marks of the heavy vehicle he had described. Now, let me tell you something else. It was in 1958. In fact, I think that the incident I'm going to describe to you, sir, is somehow connected to what happened to me in 1959. I'm sure of it. A friend of mine in Lesotho called me. He said that he had something very important and that we had to share this. He said, please, I must come to Lesotho. I must come. And I went there. And then I found that he had dug a hole at the back of his hut. And he asked me that he and I and his second wife should go into this hole on the night to come and there to share something very, very holy. Well, we went down the hole. We used a broken ladder, and there inside the hole we ate small pieces of something. He told me to chew these things very thoroughly, as they were quite hard. I still had teeth in my face at that time. And I chewed and I chewed and I chewed and I chewed. But I noticed that what I was chewing was some kind of dry substance, and that it had the same taste that you would feel in your mouth if you sucked a copper penny. It had that coppery taste, like as if you were sucking an old copper coin. And then we left the hole and we went into his house. And on the following day, we all became terribly ill, very, very ill. Our skins erupted into a rash. It was very, very painful. It was very, very itchy. We bathed with urine trying to take the itching away, but it failed. We bathed with sheep dip, and it failed. And in the end, I could no longer breathe at all. My tongue appeared to swell many times its size. And then I got so sick I could barely open my eyelids. The skin was itching like mad and I could barely breathe. And as the days went by, it was about a week, but it seemed like 100 years, slowly the rash subsided. And my skin began to peel, as did my friend's skin and the skin of his wife. We were very, very, very sick. And when I could speak, I asked him, what was the thing that you gave me to eat? This is the thing that has made us so sick. Why did you do this, my friend? He said, look, what we shared was something that can only be eaten while you are hiding in a hole. And that thing is the flesh of a god. I said, God? He said, yes. I said, but I am sick now. He said, wait, you'll recover. You either die within 2 days or you recover. Now we are going to recover because we are still alive after 2 days. Mr. Ek, I can't describe to you what happened next. I wish you to imagine, sir, you are sick, weak, and feverish. Suddenly, you get stuck, staring, raving, laughing mad. We started laughing. It was utterly incredible. What had made us to What had caused the laughter we did not know, but we laughed for hours, all three of us. And then, when our jaws couldn't laugh anymore, a new thing happened. My friend's eldest daughter gave us all water. And when I drank that water, my sense of taste was so heightened that I was utterly shaken. Ordinary water from a mountain spring tasted like, I don't know like what, like wine, like something out of I don't know where. My taste buds must have been souped up somehow. And then another feeling, which I cannot describe, fell over all of us. It was a feeling as if we were one with the entire universe. When I looked at a tree outside my friend's homestead, it was as if that tree was a multicolored living rainbow. When I looked at the mountain far away, my sense of sight was so intense that I could see colors beyond colors. I can't give you any other description. And then say, afterwards, I was very weak, but with a monstrous appetite. And then I left my friend's homestead and returned to South Africa. Every step of the way, I seemed like a person reborn. It was a feeling that no words can describe. And when I asked my friend by letter afterwards, what was this God flesh? He said it had been the flesh of a puana.
This is what we call God.
Yes, sir. People who say that these things don't exist had better think again. They are tangible, they are smellable, and furthermore, they are edible if you are willing to take the risk. In Africa, we have an ancient custom whose existence many people deny today, that anything that claims to be a god should be eaten. There are places in Africa even now where if you are a spiritual person and you are sick, well, let me tell you what happened to me in the country today called Zaire. I got sick. I was undergoing yet another of my 7 initiations. And I fell sick from very bad running stomach. And I was so sick, everything that my friends, white friends and black friends could do failed to help me. And then, one night, some of my teachers came to me and requested that since I was going to die, would I please allow them the honor of eating me after death? Now, say, it's a very good thing to be invited to a dinner, but not when you happen to be part of the menu. And I recovered so quickly that I escaped from that area in one of their ramshackle buses, and I never went back. Thank you very much. Fear can be a wonderful medicine sometimes, and it was with me.
Do you think, Credo, that those senses that you experience, that really heightened sense of everything, of oneness, of whatever, are the very senses that the Chituari have manipulated out of us?
I do, sir. I do very much. They were senses like no human being possesses. May I add, no human being possesses anymore. It was as if at one time, sir, a voice was speaking in my head, a very amazing voice. And after that, my powers of prophecy were intensified. This is what I think. We human beings are holier and more wonderful than we think we are. And I feel we lost something at some time in the course of our development, or shall I say, in the course of our manipulation.
Credo, this is fascinating information, which I'm sure many people in the UFO research community will be very, very interested in. That is that these grey extraterrestrials, or grey figures, whatever they are, don't actually really look like that. They're almost in disguise.
Yes, sir, they are. And I will tell you what. Grey aliens have died in various parts of Africa. They have been killed, and they are very, very quick to recover the bodies of their friends, which have fallen out of their crashed spacecraft. But sometimes African sangomas steal these bodies before they can be recovered. And believe me, sir, I have heard and I've seen that butchering a corpse of one of these creatures is extremely hard work. What you think is the skin of the creature is actually a tight-fitting costume that the creature is wearing. Under this grey costume, the creature, say, is pinkish white, like a freshly skinned animal, and its eyes are round with split pupils. These are goggles which the creature is wearing. Now, how do I know that? In order to dismember a creature like this, incidentally we call them mandindane in Zulu, which means the tormentors, the torturers. In order to dismember a creature like this, you need a brand new axe from the trading store, a heavy axe sharpened to a razor's edge in order to cut through the creature's skin. The creature's skin, say, is not adhering to the flesh. You know, my skin is clinging to my flesh, yes? But the creature, there is a gap between the creature's flesh and its supposed skin. This is a material and not a skin. So the creature is actually wearing two garments. It's wearing a completely skin-tight garment which covers its entire body. And it is wearing an overall along these lines. Very often there are no gloves. And here, to cut up a mandindane, you need very, very sharp iron. And you have got to be a strong person even to reach its flesh. But once you have cut through the cover, the close-fitting covering, you can just open the whole thing and see the dead creature's flesh underneath it.
Is it reptilian?
Yes, sir. It is. I will tell you how the creature looks like without its grey skin. It is like certain types of tropical fish. It's like the belly of that type of fish that is fried in South Africa to make fish and chips. That grey fish, that long grey fish, the texture of its real skin is like that. But the blood vessels are very close to the surface. In fact, not so long ago, Mr. Ike, right here in South Africa, several hundred school children, some black, some colored, were terrorized by a creature they called Pinky Pinky, a creature which looked as if it had been skinned alive. That was a Mandindan without its skin or costume.
It's interesting when you're talking about the black eyes of these greys being a cover for something, and then you have the stories of the men in black who seem to interact not very positively, to say the least, with people involved in UFO and UFO investigation and stuff. And these men in black have these black goggle-like sunglasses, which are almost a mirror of the same.
Exactly so. But let me tell you that over the last 100 years or so, the men in black have become westernized, in Africa at least. In old Africa, if you killed a Mandindan, one of these, you were visited by terrible beings who wore long black robes made of animal skin and deep hoods over their heads. And these creatures used to wear white masks with very, very terrible looking black eyes painted on them. They were called Izilo Zengubo, the beasts of the blanket. And may I tell you that these terrible beings, our African version of the men in black, used to play an important part in the choosing of certain kings in South Africa. That is one of the stories that I wish to tell you in greater detail one day. Whenever you have harmed a Mandinda, you received a visit from men in black. And one of my uncles was a night watchman just after the Second World War. And he saw what he thought was a burglar breaking into a factory which stored surplus army property. And he threw his knobkiri at this figure and hit it very hard. The creature fell behind some boxes, and then and only then did my uncle, a tough old Zulu, realize that the thing he had brought down was not a human being at all, not a young thief, but a Mandinda. My uncle threw down his second stick and ran screaming out of the factory. And not long after that, because my uncle had taken from the creature what he thought was its bag, he took the bag with him to Alexander Township after he had run out of the factory. But he could not open the bag. And while he was sitting in the shack in Alexander Township, just near Johannesburg, there arrived at his shack two white men who posed as detectives. And these so-called detectives told my uncle's common law wife that she must give to them the bag that my uncle had taken from the little man. And she did, and they vanished. What I'm trying to say, Mr. Ike, is the richer we become, the more we behave as the Chituari are said to behave. Some of us, when they acquire a lot of wealth, start consuming metals and other minerals that they really do not need, which, however, if you study the story of the Chituari, you are told that the Chituari use these minerals and metals as medicine. We are told, say, that the Chituari, when they get sick, smear their bodies with gold dust, which gets absorbed into their skins and they become all right. May I point out, it was once the custom of the Munumutapa kings of Zimbabwe, the men who built the Zimbabwe ruins, that on certain rising of the day star, the priest king would be smeared from head to foot with gold dust, and sometimes he was ritually sacrificed on the top of the wall of the Zimbabwe fortress. And to my amazement, when I visited South America, I found that the ancient Mayans had exactly the same custom where a god king was smeared with a mixture of fat and gold dust.
And I know from my own research that the Maya people and the Central and South American people have massive accounts and legends of the same reptilian gods.
Yes. The thing is, if you read the ancient stories of our people, or you listen to them spoken by the storytellers, you find that we human beings are somehow programmed to alter the world in which we live and render it uninhabitable to ourselves. We are told, say, by the griots of Nigeria, by the griots of the Dogon people, that at one time, a few thousand years ago almost, the entire Sahara Desert was not a desert at all. In fact, photographs have been taken of the certain parts of the Sahara from high up, which show ancient irrigation systems where there is now wind-blown desert. Questions: are we being used as instruments for the destruction of our own species? I say yes. The wealthier a person is, the more like a Chituari he or she behaves. Some wealthy people even go to the extent of throwing away their old spouses and acquiring new ones, exactly as King Samahongo of the Chituari does. He kills and eats all his wives when they can no longer make love to him properly, and he acquires new ones. He killed and ate 36 of his wives over a long reign, and only one wife was cunning enough to keep out of his clutches. You see millionaires divorcing their wives and acquiring new wives. And the Chituari, unlike traditional Africans, believe that a female is inferior to the male. And so do the wealthy people who acquire great wealth in this world. They tend to look down upon women and even to abuse them.
Well, let's connect this into the present day, and one thing that is a constant recurring theme is the reptilians or an extraterrestrial race interbreeding with humanity and creating particular bloodlines. And you've got an amazing artifact, I guess that's the word, necklace here, which I know is incredibly heavy, which has a very significant contribution to make to this theme of extraterrestrials or another race, not human, interbreeding with humanity. Now, first of all, where did this come from?
Sir, we don't know. This necklace has been around for so long that we don't exactly know from which tribe it came. All I can tell you is that this necklace was in existence when the king who founded the Zulu nation, Zulu, was still a boy. It is described in ancient legends centering around this king. It is called Inweba Yezimfihlo, the necklace of the mysteries. It is really a book which tells 12 different stories.
And how old do you think it is? How old do you know this history?
I don't know, sir. All I do know is that...
Hundreds of years?
Yes, very old. But it's not as old as the green face that I've just shown you.
Oh, the Chituari.
The Chituari face is said to be over 7,000 years old, this thing here. Now, this necklace enshrines several mysteries in it. Inside here are stones which are not from this earth. It is a very amazing story. There are 3 pebbles in here which stories say were brought to this earth by an alien baby which played with a human baby in the northern Transvaal. This...
First of all, that looks so much, well, it obviously looks very much like a spacecraft.
Yes. This half-molten object here used to be a serpent-like necklace worn by a Mashona chief. He went to investigate something which had landed in the bush and which was killing his people. And he went with his battle axe to attack this object. And the object blew a jet of very terrible fire at the chief. And he became just smoke. And this was all that was left of him. Now, this necklace enshrines one of the oldest and the greatest mysteries in our country. That the god beings which we call by the name Chituari and which are called Zishwezi or Imanugela in the languages of other tribes throughout Africa. These gods came down to the earth in great vessels made out of gold, and they united with female human beings to create a race of kings and queens on our earth. There isn't a tribe, Mr. Ing, anywhere in Africa. And when you return to South Africa, I will ask you to investigate this very closely. There isn't a tribe anywhere in southern, central, Western and Eastern Africa, which doesn't claim that kingship was a system that was brought down from the sky by gods who either traveled in swings, as the pygmies of Zaire say, or who came down in huge vessels which were shaped like bows, vessels made of gold, vessels bigger than mountains. I wish to share these things with you, sir, as briefly as I can. The Zulu people believed that they originated from space, and their name Zulu does not mean sky, but rather interplanetary space. And the word Zulu also has to do with traveling. For example, if I say to a child, you are getting about, you are moving from village to village lazily, I say, uyazula wena. Now the word Zula, which is used to refer to Zulus, sometimes contemptuously, in Zula, means really a traveler, a voyager, somebody moving from place to place. Where? In the Izu. Now I ask you, how did a land-bound people like the Zulus know that you could travel in space? We are Zula, Ezulwini. You can travel in the great place of traveling. For that matter, Zulu people knew that the earth was a sphere and that it was the sun that was still in space and the various planets orbited around it. I will show you on the other necklace of knowledge. And when a Zulu refers to the earth, he says, Umhlaba jikelele. Now, the word jikelele implies a spherical or a hemispherical object. But a Musutu or a Mutswana from Lesotho or from Botswana will refer to the world as Lefatshe, which means that which is down here. And he will say, when he refers to the earth's shape, Lefatshe ka Bophara. Now this word ka Bophara means the earth in its width. Thus, a Musutu or a Mutswana believes that the earth is flat